Hey guys, I'm Chris.
And I'm Mike.
And welcome back to this week's No Limits, the Thriller Podcast. We got someone here with us, Mike. Why don't you introduce him?
Special guest. You know him. You love him. Jack Carr superfan. Back with us to discuss Red Sky Mourning. Welcome, Tyler Booher.
Hey, how's it going, everybody? Glad to be back.
Welcome.
The audience knows you pretty well by now, so they've heard about your story. But you got a couple of new things going on in the pipeline. You want to tell us what's been going on?
We'll see. Maybe I think next episode I can give more details.
Okay.
But something fun heading down the pike for the Jack Carr fans would probably be into for the most part. So probably next episode, which I think if you guys would have me back on, would be for the Dark Wolf prequel series.
Right. I'd even want to do the Beirut book that Jack's releasing soon.
Yeah, you know what? That's good. I think, what is that, September? I think that's good.
Yeah.
Yeah, I should have some more news by then.
All right. Well, if you can't give us that, just tell us what you've been up to since we last talked to you. It's been about a year since we last chatted.
Yeah, roughly a year. Just been reading books and growing knowledge and start trying to broaden my library a little bit. I'm getting ready. It's about time to get a new bookcase because mine's pretty full, and just waiting on this book and trying to reread the old ones and find some stuff. I think I have a really long commute, like you guys know, so I hit the audiobooks quite a bit. So I think I've listened to Only the Dead about 5 times, but I've read it twice, so I'm pretty well versed.
Oh, wow.
All the other ones, especially Savage Son, I think I've listened to and read the most, just because it's my favorite. But I think Only the Dead is maybe number 2 or number 3 spot, but we can get into rankings later on too.
Oh, yeah.
Sure.
We're definitely going to have to get into rankings later.
I wanted to know if you were going to keep it that high, because I'm not sure if I was a prisoner of the moment with that one. Thinking back on it, I'm like, it was good. I don't know if it's Red Sky Mourning good. Like, I think this one, I think outclasses it in a lot of ways. This is a classy book. It's got its faults, but I'm wondering if I'm going to put it above Only the Dead, because I know we went pretty high on it, but I'd be surprised, to be honest, if you guys don't put it above that one.
Yeah, well, we're going to get into it. So we've already done 2 whole episodes. Everyone's sort of known our thoughts. We've saved our scorecard, so we're going to get into that in a little bit with you. We wanted to save it to do it live with you, but before we get into that, let's just get, like, your instant thoughts. What did you think of this book?
My instant thoughts were, I felt while reading it, I picked up on like either themes or feelings that I had reading some of his other novels. So I think like first half really reminded me of True Believer, with more of like a slow, calm start that's more relatable for everybody. It's I wouldn't say boring, but it's definitely a slower start, less action. I think the first half of True Believer was like that, and I think up until this book, I think I specifically know that I missed that. I think, when you're reading True Believer, you're like, come on, where's the action? Like, I miss what happened in the first book. When's it going to kick off? And then like halfway through it kicks off, and then it doesn't let up in True Believer. That pacing, it's like real slow start and then fast finish. But so I kind of missed that kind of calmness of James doing something that's not murdering people constantly. So with this one, I feel like it was a little bit of a return to that. And then there were some other elements in there that I found, trying to get like a group together to do a task, kind of like at the end of Savage Son, trying to get like a band of degenerates together to go murk some people. And so I kind of picked up on a few things that really reminded me of just some previous books. But just for his 7th book for 007, he just sure did put in the work and the nods to James Bond stuff. Just really enjoyed a lot of the Easter eggs and little moments that he's put in there. And I actually have been watching some Magnum PI, and I've actually really picked up on a lot of his nods to Magnum PI. I mean, I recall them, and I'm like, oh, like the way he wrote this dialogue and what James is thinking, it really reminds me of Magnum. But then there's actually some stuff in there that's like actually straight directly from it. Like when Magnum's stealing the Ferrari, he's trying to like work the lock. And he's like, don't look at the dogs, work the lock. And like, it's like the inner monologue, and it's just the same pace as Reece. and everything. So it had the same exact feel. And then there's a couple other episodes that are pretty reminiscent of like Magnum swimming in the ocean and recalling his childhood and his mom teaching him how to swim and stuff. And James has a lot of stuff like that in the novels as well. So
yeah, it's funny that you say like you can definitely pick up on elements or themes from his other books. And, you know, I told Mike last pod that before I had even gotten to the end, because I guess we went to meet him at, for the book signing, and he talked about how his influence for this book was 007, James Bond, Ian Fleming, all these, as well as other writing greats, 30th anniversary of Hunt for Red October. So I had like 3 more chapters left. So, you know, it was a spoiler-free thing. So nothing was spoiled. But what was spoiled for me was that, author's note at the end where he like explains essentially everything that he said at the book signing he said. But going into it, I was able to pick up on every single one of those things. You know, it really lifts off the page what he's trying to do, the elements that he's getting from his research. I think, Mike, you agreed with me. I thought that this was one of his best written novels. I feel like he's really coming in. He's hitting his stride. Like, I think Only the Dead was, we're getting very good, but like this was a little bit of a step up. And I could see why, Mike, you would say that like you like this one better, maybe because of that. But yeah, like I think everything that he set out to do, he executed it 100%.
And not to mention the plot, just a banging plot that had me from the get-go with the submarine scene, everything with Taiwan. I was all in on that to begin with. Then you throw me the low Earth orbit satellite attack, and it's basically a whole nother book from there. So I felt the plotting, the pacing, the sequence was just nearly spot on, almost perfect. And that last sequence was amazing. What'd you think, Ty, as you were finishing the book? Were you just as invested as I was and couldn't put it down?
Yeah, reading it for the first time, I read it once, listened to it once, and I'd like to get a few more in of each, just because that's what I do with this series for whatever reason. Because I go in phases. Like I'll like listen.
That's why you're the super fan.
I'll listen to just music for like a month, and then just podcasts for a month, and then like I'm not in the mood for either, and I'll jump into audiobooks, and somehow through 4 audiobooks every quarter of the year, I'll somehow thread in a Jack Carr one that I've listened to or read multiple times. So this one's just going to be in the rotation now. But yeah, I feel like I want to go back and find the details. I really enjoy a lot of the details he puts in. I feel like, I agree with that he's really kind of getting into like the prime of his writing form, or at least finding his feet is kind of not the right term, because I feel like he did that a while ago, but
maybe
I feel like
finding his voice.
Yeah, I think that's a good way to put it. I feel like the last couple we've been like, man, he's getting better. I feel, is this as good as it's going to get? And then the next one, is he? This is better than the last one. It's pretty good. And I feel like, I don't think he'll run out of ideas anytime soon, but I think you guys are, I agree with you that this is probably his best written book. I just find the content overall better for me for Only the Dead. A lot of the Vietnam Mac v. Sog stuff, I really enjoyed all of the breadcrumbs that we were left and James was left over the course of the series, and he finally picked those up and you got to see, and the payoff was just so great. Whereas for this one, I feel like the main payoff was all Alice stuff from In the Blood. So I feel like just the build up for the last one's a lot bigger and the payoff is enormous. Yeah. But in this one, I really love the environment and the setting. Mike, I know I told you that in the beginning of this book, it's set in Whitefish and Kalispell, which last year I did unknowingly a solo vacation by myself to Montana last year for 8 days. And I spent 4 days in Kalispell and Whitefish and 4 days in Bozeman. And it was my favorite trip I've ever taken. Whitefish is by far my favorite town I've ever been to. If I had to move anywhere, it would be Whitefish. So to see those names in there and like him talk about the airport and in Kalispell and stuff, and like I've been there, and I was like, this is cool. Crazy. Like I absolutely love it there. Had a blast. I hiked in Glacier National Park, hiked Sacagawea Peak in Bozeman. So I just had an amazing trip, and then to read a book that kind of takes me back there, and I know what the setting is pretty awesome.
That's funny. When were you in Montana?
I think in August of last year.
What dates?
I don't know. I'd have to look.
Oh, that's so funny. Yeah, we took a trip to Glacier and Yellowstone.
Probably cross paths.
We might have been on the going to the Sun Road at the same day.
Yeah.
But we stayed in Browning because that's where my sister-in-law teaches on the reservation there. Complete opposite. We went to Whitefish. It's like the complete opposite sort of mentality of Whitefish being an Indian reservation and that kind of vibe. But now that area it's special. It is just very special.
My first day there for Glacier, I did a red bus tour, which was like the greatest way for me to get there by myself with no guide or anybody else who's been there before. So the red bus tour really helped me kind of get my bearings and then go from there. And I did some pretty awesome hikes there, but I enjoyed Kalispell. I went to Black Rifle Coffee Shop there every morning. That's ran by Andy Stumpf. He does the Cleared Hot podcast. So I actually got to run into him and meet him briefly while I was out there. And I did a bunch of jiu-jitsu while I was there too at SBG in Kalispell and SBG in Bozeman. I rolled pretty much 7 out of the 8 days I was there, I think. So it was a good time.
Jack Carr's already a huge brand, but now you guys maybe could start Jack Carr Travel Company, the Travel Adventure LLC.
Yeah. Travel agency.
It's not a bad idea, actually, with all these novels. You could put together vacation packages based on a theme, like the Mitch Rapp vacation package, top sites of Scott Harvath's career. You could do the James Reece, 5-country tour. There's something in that. There's an idea there.
Yeah. Planned stops at bourbon barrels, archery ranges, bookstores.
Dude, I'm surprised that hasn't happened yet. The way Jack Carr grows this business and has his hands on everything.
They have that for Harry Potter. You can go on these Harry Potter tours, going around even though little Wingen is not a real place, but it's based off of a town over there. So I'm surprised that something like this. We gotta Jack will get to that.
It's coming. He's gonna announce that, on his podcast tomorrow, I'm sure.
On your guys' end of things, have you seen or heard anything? I know filming has just wrapped on the prequel series. Any thoughts or opinions on how that's going? If you've noticed, a lot of the casting for this prequel series are characters from True Believer. So I'm guessing that they, for Terminal List, it was kind of a let's do one season, see how it goes, and then they got renewed for the prequel and then the sequel. But it looks like they basically signed actors to be in both Dark Wolf and True Believer, because I looked at the cast list and a lot of the characters, like I said, are from True Believer. So I think they're going to kind of get an introduction in Dark Wolf, and then we'll know them and have them flushed out by
come back for season 2.
Yeah.
I'm okay with that. I like that.
I'm good with it too. I'm excited for that.
Yeah, and we'll tell you a little bit of what Jack said at the book signing, and he was taking a break. He was going from we got to meet him in Pennsylvania, and then he was going back to his hometown for one last signing, and then literally that night he was then going to fly back to where were they doing filming, Mike?
Somewhere in Europe, Hungary. Budapest. Yep.
Budapest. Yeah. So he's flying back to Budapest to wrap it up. And he was saying that unlike the first season of True Believer of the Terminal List, he was sort of just an exec, I don't even think he was an executive producer at that point. He was just, the author. They considered him, but now he is a full-fledged executive producer. So he has say in the casting for this, this series, as well as, season 2, even though he was kind of in the room for the casting, and obviously he wanted Chris Pratt to play that character, some of the other people, he talked a little bit about Taylor Kitsch and how he was, in the end it worked out, but he likes the fact that he has a little bit more of a hand going forward in a lot of these things. So yeah, it's going to be interesting to see, what they do with this series, and then how that then spins out to. And what I'm guessing, what he was kind of hinting at, is that they're going to kind of do an every other year type thing. It would be 1 year of this show, 1 year. So we're kind of going to be jumping back and forth between timelines going forward.
That's good. I think Taylor Kitsch is a really good actor, and he is always casted as either a bad guy or somebody who bites the dust, so he never lasts long in film or TV, and I think he deserves a little bit of a break as far as that department goes. And I think he was cast as Gambit. It was maybe one of the first roles I saw him in. Maybe I can't remember if Gambit first in X-Men Origins Wolverine or John Carter, which wasn't the greatest,
Oh,
but
yeah.
I remember him being cast and I liked him at the time. And ever since then, he's never been in anything like long term. And I feel like he got cast as Gambit, was supposed to do a Gambit movie that got axed, so I feel like he's a good fit. I like him a lot and he fits the role well.
He was in our favorite movie, American Assassins. So.
Yeah. Calm down, Mike.
Oof. You heard our review of that. The audience doesn't need any more of my rants on that one.
I think the best thing that he's been in is the TV show in Friday Night Lights. That's what I liked him as the most. I don't know if you guys, either of you watch that show.
Yeah, I like him in Lone Survivor, and then I'm trying to actually think. There's a few other roles I really like him in, but yeah, I'm happy to see him get his own leading role in something like that. So hopefully it lasts a little longer than some of his previous work. But and then we'll see. I'm hoping we can get to at least Savage Son, but I have a feeling it seems like Chris Pratt has a production company and their only deal, they only really send stuff to Amazon. And I think this is like more of like a long-term thing for Chris Pratt and his production company. So I think he might be in it for the long haul. I know he said, of course, when it came out, I mean, what else is he going to say? But In the Blood was his favorite one. So I know they had
at least 5 seasons.
Yeah. So I know that they're trying to get that at least. So I'm hoping that is the outcome. But I have a feeling that it seems like his production companies kind of needs those longer term projects. I think the first one he did with them was the Tomorrow War, and since then he's been kind of here and there doing streaming stuff. So
I could see them not altering the timeline, but maybe condensing some of the books. Like I wonder if they would even go into The Devil's Hand. You could probably push up some of the Tom Reese stuff. I wouldn't be surprised if they're going to try to broach some of the Tom Reese little hints that he leaves, the lockbox, the Jeep, and, the gun case. Like, you might drop some of that early, so then you could maybe do that payoff a little earlier in the timeline than book 6, So I think they've got some wiggle room that you don't need to have 5, 6, 7 seasons just because there's that many books.
Like the first book so clearly had to you had to, even though they didn't stay fully on script, but like it just has this defined start and end. And then I feel like you gotta, I really hope they don't cut out, my favorite part of True Believer. Like I hope we get, some, but that might just be one episode. Like I could see how it's,
well, the Africa stuff could be like a montage also.
It's probably going to be like 1 to 2 episodes, and then you're going to move into the action.
You got to do Ukraine and Freddie Strain. Even if you don't do Ukraine as the location, you've got to do the assassination attempt with the Freddie Strain storyline. Even if you completely change the context, that book it worked, but you don't have to necessarily make it in Odessa this time around,
because that sets up
anywhere.
Nazar Katan, like that.
Exactly.
I thought JD Pardo's character maybe was going to replace Freddie Strain a little bit. I've been bothering him because he actually replies to fans and stuff, but I haven't gotten anything out of him.
I remember that theory you had, and that seemed about right with the vibes of the first season. That did seem accurate.
Yeah, just because they can build a little bit of a rapport, and the CIA can send JD Pardo's character after James in Africa to try and recruit him.
Absolutely, that could very much work. What do you think about Katie? Because that was probably, for fans of the novels, the biggest sticking point of the TV show is people didn't really see them having chemistry, and they almost went too heavy into the psychological drama. There's that one scene on the island when they're in the house and he's like a madman. He's just crazy. And it was hard for some people to think what he was doing and how scary he was to Katie in that moment is redeemable, in the sense of she can see something in him that he's not a monster and they can have this relationship. I feel like that is going to have to be very, very different than it was in the books.
I feel like if they're going to try, I think it's salvageable. It just depends on if they can get her to sign on for more seasons and be that love interest, or if they need to throw somebody else in there to replace her narratively. But if they're going to do it, in the books, how Katie's obsessed with figuring out how did James know that the debt cord wouldn't go off from the first book. And here, I feel like in the show, it would be the SUV blowing up with the with the
Right.
copper bowl going through, he sees her and she could ask, well, how'd you know it wouldn't kill me? And
Yeah.
he could say that I didn't. And, that kind of is more the savage side, but deep down he knows it wouldn't have killed her. But
Because he's seen so many. They could like flash back to other like
yeah, they
IEDs
could
that he's
show,
seen,
yeah,
or EMPs.
they could show him being the victim of one and he was at that distance or something.
Exactly.
So
It's tough though. They're going to have to do some more work on that because in the books, almost everyone bought it. Like that storyline worked and their relationship made sense.
yeah,
It's going to be harder with what they did in season 1 to make that relationship click. That's a tall task.
I agree. It just takes some writing.
I think that's going to be the hardest thing for them to
Well,
do.
the good thing is that she's not really in book 2 at all.
Yeah,
So
true.
she,
Yeah.
they could pick it up in the beginning of Savage Son with him getting his tumor removed, and that's where she's asking him about the debt cord. So I don't feel like if she's not casted in True Believer, it, by no means does that mean that she's out as a character for the show. But
That's true.
Speaking of No Katie, she's kind of not in this book. Like, what did you guys think of that? Like, I mean,
Well, there was the attack.
her important, obviously she plays an important role in the sense that like her attack is what springboards James into, getting back in, but she's very minimally used in this book. It was something that I didn't really think about until you just, mentioned that.
I'd say it's perfect. She's
What do you guys
about in
think?
the first third of the first act of it, through the attack and everything. And I think the attack is actually one of the better parts of the books, or better part of this book in particular, because
For sure.
we never see James this vulnerable. We never see him worried. And, every other instance of his life, he has his own life in his own hands and he is fearless with it. He doesn't care what happens to him. But now that he sees, he has affected somebody else, and now it's like the first time I think we have seen him scared of anything. So it's just a little bit of a different look.
Very true.
A little bit of a different look for him. And what I really like about this book is that Katie doesn't argue with him. There's no drama. They're on the same team. I hate whenever movies, TV shows, or books place love interests against each other to the point where they're enemies, and it's taking up 2 chapters of arguments, that we didn't need to be involved in. And I really like this because she does what he needs, which is she lets him off the leash, and he does what he needs to do, and kind of leaves her behind more so than he intended, I think. But it's for the better. I think the fact that she's mainly in the first act is one of the bigger benefits of this one, actually.
Yeah, and that also, that mind space that he's in, I think sets the tone of the book, because a reoccurring theme is it his fault, his guilt?
Right.
And when he's rendering first aid, you're absolutely right that is one of the most intense scenes that you could read, because he's all over the place. He doesn't know if he can save her. He doesn't know if he's doing the right thing or the wrong thing with the med kit, because he's just freaking out. He kind of forgets for a second that the sniper still has his eyes trained on the room. He is tactically kind of making mistakes. And that's going to carry through, because then in the hospital, Liz has to be there and Rafe have to be there to take care of him. They literally have to be like, Reese, take a shower.
Yeah.
Go
I
for a
love
walk.
those chapters.
He's an absolute mess. So while we were reading it, it was so deep, it was so raw, it was so emotional. But after I put the book down and I was at that halfway point, I'm like, this kind of already happened. It was great while I was reading it. And I was glad she didn't die, of course. But I was like, this is almost the exact same thing.
It's not going to have
he
the
already
same
lost his wife and kid.
Yeah, it's not going to have the same gravity any other time you read it, because she lives. When I was reading it, I was like, oh shit, are they going to kill her off? This is freaking close. This is getting really damn close to them killing her off. It's going to happen.
Yeah.
And I was like, if she dies, he's going to be more animalistic than we've probably ever seen him. And it doesn't happen. My brain goes to, oh, well, if this happens, here's the effect of that. And meanwhile, it ends up not happening. But
I mean, that would have just kind of taken us back to square one. But that's what I'm saying is yes, I was invested. I was wondering, is she going to die? I was like, holy shit, is he going to do it? So I was all in. But then when I step back, I'm like, we already saw that. Why was I on the edge of my seat? I knew she'd live because, one, he did that. What is he just going to go back to being the terminal list Reese? I knew what was going to happen essentially, even though while I was reading it, I didn't. So looking back on it, it's not one of my favorite parts of the book, but obviously while I was reading it, I probably would have said, this is insane. This is great.
I think, Chris, something you really wanted from a previous book was, is it at the end of Savage Son where he ends up traveling across like the archipelago solo to kill someone, I think.
Oh, yeah.
And he's like stealing stuff in the middle of the night to survive. Yeah, he's going through Siberia. That's right.
Yeah.
And I think, Chris, you were specifically like, dude, give me a book on that. And like, we kind of get a little bit more of Reece in that mode in this.
Yeah, true.
A little bit more of
Very
him
true.
just being solo, surviving, just doing his own thing.
The sailor, and then we get the sailor at the end, which was awesome.
Yeah, I think
love the epilogue.
Yeah, I like the epilogue too. I feel like he's a little more primal in this, which is how he is in Savage Son.
Yeah. And that's because Katie lets him be, like you said.
Yeah.
She lets Reece be Reece.
Also, the property going to her from the previous book is fantastic. And the fact that they have the dogs at the beginning also is great detail. I liked a lot. They have the dogs from that property.
So, since we're just talking about the sailor and the Malta scene, that plays a key role in today's limerick.
Oh, you got one.
And so I got 2 limericks, and I think the second one will bring us up to something else, which I definitely want to ask you about, Tyler.
Is it a Chat GPT limerick?
No, hey, no. This is a No Limits Thriller Pod original right here. 2 of them.
We don't cheat here, Chris.
There once was a sailor in Malta who thought it was all of his faulta. World War III takes shape as he makes an escape. Now a black star on the wall at the altar.
Ooh, okay. You're making up words now. Okay.
Nothing rhymes with Malta. It wouldn't have worked. So it had to be his faulta.
Creative.
We're not
creative.
playing Scrabble. Next time we
effort.
get together, we're not playing Scrabble. This is bullshit. Mike making up words.
Well, hold on. Here's my next one because something in this one connects to that. I like this idea of the star on the wall, and I called it the altar. That CIA, the wall, and I put that in my other limerick too. A rogue AI on the loose, as China tightens the noose. Ulsan stands tall. Reece's star goes on the wall. 'Tis time he puts down some roots.
That's a good one.
What did you think, Ty, of President Ulsan, how she handles the final 100 pages of this book, 50 pages of this book, where she just becomes a boss, and ultimately that speech she gives at Langley?
Yeah, I thought that we really deserved more with the previous president, and I really enjoyed the friendship that him and James had. And so I just feel like we kind of deserve more of that friendship and relationship. Like I really love like the camp, even though we all have our opinions of what is it, Devil's Hand. The scenes,
Christensen was the best part of that book.
Yeah,
he was great.
The scenes, scenes at Camp David are my favorite, probably my favorite.
Absolutely,
in that book.
Yeah.
And
everything with the president is the best part of that book.
Yeah, and
including the prologue.
Yeah, for sure.
Correct.
The prologue's great.
Yeah.
But back to this, I definitely think that she grew into that character and gave us some content that we were kind of owed, I feel like, from not only that past president, but just from that position of power.
Yeah, for sure.
And I really feel like there's a few, let me think here. There's a few characters where I feel like they left off on a good foot in the last book, but in this one that kind of picks up kind of rough. And forgive me, the name's slipping my mind. It's like who Reece directly reports to at CIA.
Vic?
Yeah.
Vic.
So Vic, when Vic first shows up in this one, it seemed like Reece didn't want anything to do with him. He knows he wants something that Reece doesn't want to give him, which is probably his time or his effort or his, to leave his comfort zone that he now has in Montana, which is all fair. But I feel like it was just odd that how standoffish he was instead of a little more friendly. But I know he still, they do talk about him still having hard feelings about being locked up for so long in the last one. But what are your thoughts? What are your thoughts on some of the relationships evolution?
Vic ultimately had a hand in getting him out.
Yeah.
That's what I.
Yeah. Did you
it was
did
kinda
you
weird
feel
to
like
me.
Did you feel like that too? I felt like Reece was way too standoffish.
I think he was testy with the CIA, with the agency, with the organization, and it was just Vic happened to be the face, who found him. I think he loves Vic dearly. I just think Vic represents this old life that he is trying to break from and can't.
Yeah.
I just thought it was weird that he's flying, and I don't know. I mean, he really can't see like this guy that's casually walking up. Like he has to grab a rifle when he's flying. Like he's in a prop plane. Like it's not
almost
like that far.
almost wrecks it.
So I don't know. Like that was a little, but it's all for suspense.
He does wreck it at the end.
Yeah,
he does.
I agree that it's for suspense. I don't know. There's a few things that just seem like a little unnecessary to get you hyped up on that first read through. But now that I know what happens, I'm gonna try and make it through those parts so I can get back to the details that I want. Like I want to see. I remember him picking up the PPK, which is one of my favorite parts. He's whenever can we get to him in what is it China? Him in China for the offer for him to switch sides.
Right.
What you guys think of those scenes of him over there in the tuxedo?
Very James Bond.
Very James Bond. We had said in our episode that this may have been the weakest part of the book. I don't think it's because of how it's written. And it's not because the allure of it all, like at this casino on the top floor, ready to gamble, the Baccarat references, and the meal with the Chinese operative. It wasn't for those reasons. It was simply because of the buy-in, the buyability. And we got to get to the scorecard soon, but I was not bought into this offer that they made that Reece would be so upset with his country, he'd be willing to defect and he would need a safe haven to live in. And that just kept bothering me so much. And then when the Chinese guy is like, oh, if he won't accept our offer, let's just go kill him. I don't think we would have got to that part.
Why didn't we just try and kill him?
Just to have the casino scene. It was just forced.
Why didn't
That's exactly what I said.
Why didn't we just try and kill him from the get-go? I know we've sent 20 guys and everyone fails, but we got to get more creative.
They sent those mercs after him who were like do nothings. It's like
they're red shirts. They're dead. They don't even have name. They don't even have name tag.
Instead of saying like, oh, he's disaffected with his country, let's invite him over. No. You say like, let's invite him over, so that way we could maybe trap him and kill him. Like that to me buys me in, makes more sense than like them. Like the way he wrote it, it made it sound like they legitimately thought they could turn this guy.
Yeah, and I liked a lot of the Alice stuff, especially her calm. Even though it was quick, I thought maybe we'd get a little bit more detail of her fighting that other AI or that other computer.
Napoleon.
I did like how quickly she did it and the details of what she says, and eventually she really starts talking like Reece, which I do enjoy, and I like their relationship growth and the evolution of that. But I was thinking Napoleon was going to be a little bit more of a threat, and she was going to have to like. I always felt like she always helps Reece, and this time Reece was going to help her. Like she was going to be nervous and feel like she was backed into a corner, and he was going to advise her on how to eliminate him, and then she would go do something. But instead, she just goes
being on the ground. Yeah, I thought he might being on the ground, like he's underground, and he sees or some sort of like way Napoleon is hooked up.
Yeah,
but he can't get that through to Alice, and like Alice is dejected and almost going to tell the president like, fuck it, we gotta launch because I can't shut this guy down. And then Reece pops out of the tunnel or whatever, connects with Alice in the Situation Room, is like, this one thing I saw down there.
Yeah.
And Alice is like, got it.
Okay, what are 3 things that stick out in your head when you think of this book? Mike, you go first. Things or scenes.
Submarine plot.
Okay, submarines.
I mean, the submarine plot, the opening, the first scene.
Okay.
Clearly. Alice and Reece's conversations, Alice taking on Reece, becoming Reece, and the consequences of that. And then literally the last, I don't even know how long, 75 to 100 pages, basically everything from the torture scene on. That sequence, straight through, everything with Ox. And by the way, we're talking oldies but goodies, Ox and Andy Danreb. Those are 2 winners of the book right here. Those are massive characters, and the way they come back in is masterful. So bringing them back, Alice and Reece's relationship and the submarine plot, nailed it.
Yeah, I can see.
What do you guys say?
Chris? What about you? Your top 3 things you think of for this book?
Well, I mean, I can go 3 different things than what Mike said, even though like maybe some of the real things I would say would overlap. But I think really trying to embrace this 007 mentality, and ultimately up to like I actually really like the latest 007 movie, and Mike hasn't seen it, but he knows the ending, so I'm not like spoiler. But spoiler warning for anyone that hasn't seen No Time to Die. But like at the end of that,
He does have time to die.
he's literally James Bond is on the island, and all these missiles are coming, and he's sort of resigned to himself that he's gonna die, and like I just love the fact that Jack paid homage to that at the end of this.
Yeah.
So that's one. I really liked, even though it was the chapter that we got to read ahead of time, like the scene of him flying, and then the fact that it came back into play later on. Like you knew that it's like a Occam's razor.
Oh,
like
yeah.
it's definitely, why else have him learn to fly? And I think Reese's quippiness in this novel, Jack even said at the book signing that he had to tone down some of his
the jokes,
the jokes and the humoristic rhetoric that he had put into James's mouth because, one, like if he was actually did this, the other side of the party would not tolerate this in real life, and two, just sort of stay a little more true to the character. I mean, I guess James has always been he's not like a hardcore, no nonsense kind of guy. But I felt
a smart ass.
He's not a goofy Scott Harvath though. Scott Harvath is just goofy with it.
But I felt that in this novel he was a lot more smart-assy. Yeah. I liked it. I liked it a lot. So
yeah.
For me, mine's probably comedy. I feel like it was lacking in the last two, and I think this one more than made up for it. So
very true. It was very absent in the last one.
It was a different tone though. The last one with the father stuff and the Poe stuff and the Stowe stuff. It was like dark. It was almost like noir.
It was noir and dark and gritty, and I really love the cold. Again, this was like it reminded me of Cold War era spy stuff with Mac v. Sog guys and just guys that were badass at the time, and I just really enjoy the tone of that one. I think it all fit, but I was like, man, I miss having a couple of laughs. And this one, like, really, I caught myself actually chuckling, as I was reading along or listening along. And, there's quite a few good ones. I think Rafe was a good character in this one. All those side characters we love, and, Ox and Andy Dan Reb and everybody, I feel like shined more so in this one than maybe you realize they're going into it. I mean, you never know how it's going to go or who they're going to introduce. But I feel like in other books, they have a very specific purpose. Once that purpose is done, they're gone. And this one, they're a little bit more than that, I think. But so comedy is my number one. Number two is the Katie injury scene and chapters. I felt like those were pretty cool and different. And then the third thing, for some reason, out of that third act, the thing that sticks in my mind the most is the underwater fight in the tunnel as it's being flooded.
Oh yeah, I was going to say that too.
That sticks out in my head more than most of the other stuff in the third act, honestly.
Yeah, I guess we can kick off our scorecard, sort of talking about action suspense, with talking about, our favorite action scenes. So that one really stuck out to me. The description of it and the way I'm like thinking about it very, some action scenes I read them and, they're cool. But some of them, like, I'm really trying to, like, visualize it in my head, what's actually happening. And when he's talking about, like, putting, like Mike mentioned in the last part, like, the ingenuity to put that light on the one side and then go up the other side and, like, to play this cat and mouse game. And then, having it fill up with water and, the breathing and the fact that his opponent is a former MMA fighter and like this the brutality in this underwater fight and then like to almost literally die but to not give up to get there. That was such a cool scene.
Great scene. And it's so funny that was only one small slice of the total action and suspense. And during that scene, another thing that's raising the suspense is we're cutting away and seeing
to Alice go in
the
nuclear.
Situation room. Right, we're seeing Alice go to DEFCON 1 and ghost the president and ghost the Security Council as nukes are spinning up. Like, all that was happening while Reese is freaking drowning. It's just unbelievable. And don't forget the suspense. I don't know about you guys reading that first chapter, though. I'm like, is this Chinese commander really going to start World War III? And then when the president's talking to the Chinese premier, I'm like, Or no, I think it was our Secretary of Defense talking to their secretary. And I'm like, is this happening? Like, is this book going to be nukes fly from the get-go in the prologue or the first chapter. So all of that, start to finish, a slight dip in the middle we talked about on our earlier episodes. I think I'm going 9 out of 10 on action. Are you guys in that boat with me, or
I was going to go 9 out of 10.
You're going 9 and a half.
I'm at 9.
Oh, God. All right,
Could I throw it that half?
So,
I'm not going to throw it that half. I'm going to stay at 9 because, and here's another little quibble. And Ty, we didn't bring this up before. Kind of that dip in the action and the plot and my buy-in happened at the same time as he was in San Francisco.
Yeah.
Which I liked the setting of San Francisco, but it was like a forced plot point to introduce that new millionaire retired old man on the boat.
Yeah.
And I was like, you're just forcing this to give us more background on Hart Industries or Elba Industries and this Hart guy. It was making a one-off character that to me didn't have any pull or insight or reason that I should care about this guy. You just needed to describe to me how bad Hart is and why he's a threat.
Yeah.
And I felt like that kind of wasted my time.
I agree with you, but without it, you'd be like, who the hell is this guy and why is he doing what he's doing and why does he have what he has? So I will say, while I do agree with you, I think without it, you'd be as upset in a different way.
Yeah. It serves a purpose. Yeah, I'll agree.
And we next book, we gotta get away from these Andy Danreb chapter long
descriptions of something.
Description, whether it's the finance in the last one.
The finance in the last one was bad.
Yeah. At least this one was a little bit more engaging, and he even jokes about it, like Reece as the conduit of it. But like if we have like one next time on the geopolitics of or like how Bitcoin is created, like I can't deal with it.
I will say that was not one of my faults this time around because it wasn't as bad as the last one. It's almost becoming like a hallmark in the series of like the Danreb download. It's like a segment you gotta have.
It could be like, oh, we're gonna get to that chapter. Yeah.
You know what I would like to see is if something ever happens to Andy. Do you guys?
Ooh.
Yeah. Well, if anything ever happens to Andy, do you guys remember his house full of books and how much James likes to read? I have a feeling that that might come in handy later down the road.
I could see that. I could see that. And that kind of reminds me, there's a couple other books. Oh, who the heck is the character? There's an Andy Danreb-like character, and in another series, the one that Kyle Mills wrote, Joe Rickman in the Mitrap series, kind of this know-it-all who has too much in his head to be captured. And like if this person were co-opted or forced to work with the enemy, they know too much. They're too smart. And I feel like Andy Danreb, if he goes missing, that is going to, like the CIA is going to go nuts because he knows so much about everything and he's so smart. I feel like if he's either forced to do something bad for the enemy, that could be a gripping plot line, or we just love the guy so much we want to find him. I would love more Andy Danreb being brought into the plot and not just the sideshow Bob who comes in and makes a splash.
Yeah. All it takes is a bad guy to figure out, hey, the reason Reece is so knowledgeable on what the hell we're doing is because of this guy,
Andy and Vic. Yeah.
And somebody goes by on one of those rows on one of those like what are they, the rowing boats? Past his house, he watches his granddaughters go by in.
Yeah,
he's done.
Yeah, they're doing recon on his place. So what does this mean for plot then? Because I talked a few times about when this plot dipped a bit, things felt forced, but overall, taking a step back, it was phenomenal.
I think it's a solid 9.
Yeah, I'm at 8.5.
8.5. Okay.
Yeah, I'll give it that 9 as well. I'm going to give it that 9. My point that I'm missing is more for sequencing than it is the actual storyline.
No, explain why you're 8.5.
Oh, my 8.5 for story is just in those slower moments there are some just a little too much forcefulness, and I understand the homages to James Bond and everything. I really love them, but there's a couple of parts that are just a little, in my opinion, not as grounded as the rest of the series feels. And so those are the only little details for story plot that I feel give it that for me.
Yeah, and
It's only a half a point.
If you had asked me to score the plot, halfway through the book, I probably would have given it like a close to a 7.5 and 8,
Same.
just because of that the slowness we were getting through. But I guess I'm bringing it back up to that 9 because of the ending, So yeah, but I fully understand that. And so buy-in, I was bought into almost everything in this plot. I don't see why I can't give it a 5. Maybe we have this the main hole we have is the gripe about do the Chinese really believe that that he would actually come over to actually defect? So I'm not bought into that.
Their reason list is sound. It's just that that's not that
true.
We know who he is. They don't.
Yeah. True. So I have no reason not to give it a 5. Really.
Wow.
Yeah,
nice.
I'm there too. Buy-in's 5 for me.
I was gonna say I can make up that half and join you because I kind of forgot about the satellite plot and how the torture scene reveals the plot about low Earth orbit satellites, because that's just such an interesting and engaging plot twist that made sense. So Taiwan was a distraction. The submarine plot was throwing us off. You got Overmatch. I was bought into all those. I'm going to go 9.5 on the plot for that. I'm going to give it the half a point on plot, but still keep it 4.5 on buy-in because of a couple of the things I mentioned. But you got me up, Chris. You gave me that half a point boost.
All right. Sounds good.
Bad guys. Is this perhaps the weakest link or no? Did you guys like the Chinese, Ba Jin, meeting with the Hardings, Hart, Elba?
I thought it was solid. What's the highest score for this category again, Mike?
This is
5. So for me, this would be like 4.5, just because. Yeah. So this would be 4.5 for me. I thought it was a really good array of bad guys, and you need a lot of them against James. And I think the only reason it's not a 5 is because for me, Savage Son has the best villain lineup, and this doesn't quite touch that. So this is a 4.5.
Yeah.
So I think that this is definitely the weakest part of the novel, but not in the sense that it's weak. It's just like, if you had to pull at something, the Hardings are interesting, but in the end, they're besides getting got, they don't really play that big of a role, other than setting up the plot. The main Chinese guy, interesting. I guess the most interesting bad guy is the Bajing, with that whole interrogation scene, and then he obviously gets everything flipped around on him and gets all of his tactics put on him. So
don't forget the bad AI. Don't forget the bad quantum computer.
Oh,
I have them. I have
Okay.
Napoleon in my lineup of villains.
Yeah, Napoleon and the guy Andrew Hart from Elba Industries.
Underwhelming though.
Yeah, they were a little. Like you said, I'm glad I'm not the only one that wanted it. I wanted a Napoleon Alice showdown
AI battle. I wanted that.
Yeah, that's what I was hoping would happen. And meanwhile, she leaves, comes back, and she's like, "He's dead." I was like, "What the hell?" Like, this is 5 seconds.
Yeah,
but they sort of explain it away with the sense that in their world, 2 seconds is a very long time.
which I do enjoy too. I like those details.
That was funny.
cute, but it didn't satisfy as much as having those two AIs outsmart, outthink each other, and we get to see the gears turning, and that's affecting military maneuvers and operations. You could have gone so far with that.
I think I'm a 3.5. I don't know. It's a low score for me, but
I think we gave that type of score for the villains in The Devil's Hand, I think, which was pretty bad.
Yeah, if you compare this to other books, that's why I'm going 4.
It's not quite that bad. So
that's why I'm going 4. I when I was reading
maybe you're right.
I didn't love the villains so much, but compared to other books, they're not that bad. So I gotta go 4. I maybe could hit 3.5, but I'm gonna go 4.
Okay.
Good guys. What do you guys think on the good guys? Tyler?
Is this out of 5, right?
5 points,
yes.
Good guys. I feel like we could have used more Rafe, maybe. But I mean, you can't really complain. I mean, I don't like I'm really having to think about anywhere where I feel like there were shortcomings, and I'm not really thinking of any. So I can go a 5. Andy didn't drone on about finances too long. I mean, that's always a plus. So you can get a bonus point for that.
Jonathan's conversation, Jonathan Hastings and Reece in the office.
Yeah.
Yeah, you know what? I think that's a good one that I forgot about. So I know Jack had said his favorite conversation in all the novels is Caroline and James, and I think this was to kind of be the new version of that.
Agreed.
Yeah,
Yes,
for sure.
I like that.
I think I can go a 5 for the good guys on this one.
I think I can join you, and the Jonathan conversation gets me up there because Reece had his moment with Caroline, very impactful. He's getting that here with Jonathan, the typewriter being passed on. I think that's powerful. And then you mentioned the comedy before. Well, there's also some really small characters where that comes through. And like Grouper on the boat and the team that he and Ox go in with on the island. I think we're getting a lot of little side characters that are really good. I think there's even a Filipino, I don't know if she was CIA, but when he's in the Philippines, he liaises with somebody, and it's like this the Iron Eagle.
She was with Ox.
Yeah, we're getting all these people along the way, which gave a great texture, and we're getting a lot of the people we already knew and loved. So I think I'm going 5. It's a great team up.
I was gonna go like 4.5, 4, but until you like brought up those other characters, I kind of forgot about. I forgot about liking that team up, like you mentioned earlier, Tyler, of like this crew of Ox and these other former operators that he had either known or heard about, like going onto that island, and then obviously getting to, do I want more Rafe? Do I want more Jonathan? Do I want more Katie? Yeah, I would, but I guess like the spirit of this novel is to sort of have that lone gunman mentality. I have to be the one always to save the world. So maybe I shouldn't ding it. So you know what? Mike, you convinced me. Tyler, you convinced me. I'm going to join you guys both with a 5.
Rafe and Jonathan, they take their shot too. They get their moment, And what I was wondering in that closing scene when they go hunting in Napa for the Hardings, I was wondering that whole time, do they know James is alive? It's almost like they're picking up the mantle to go tie up loose ends in honor of Reece. So the whole time at the CIA, during those closing events, even Max Gendrick getting the Chinese guy, I'm like, who knows that Reece is alive? I don't think it's very many people. And you and I, Chris, debated this, so I wonder what Tyler's take on it would be, is what were the instructions to Alice? Is anybody supposed to know he's the sailor in Malta besides Katie? Did Alice tell Vic? Did Alice tell Jonathan? Tell Rafe? I'm really curious about that. To me, that's an excellent cliffhanger that doesn't have to have things blow up in your face. Are they alive? Are they dead? Kind of cliffhanger. I really just want to know, how are these character relationships now going to change? And to me, that's an awesome thing that I want to see in the next book. Who knows he's alive?
Chris, what do you think?
Well, obviously Katie does. So my justification was that Jonathan and Rafe know because that's what's set up. He met with the guy in Malta who was obviously he was a Rhodesian fighter with Jonathan. So like, I'm assuming that they all know that way, but Mike had sort of said, well, maybe he doesn't because this guy didn't want to contact anyone, and he only accepts him because he knows Jonathan, like he's willing to like help him out. But with that being said, doesn't mean he's going to like willingly jump back into that life. And Katie's obviously the one gets the information from Alice. So yeah, but then how do we start the next novel? Like, if no one knows that James is alive besides Katie,
dude.
Yeah, it's cool. It's a nice cliffhanger.
Maybe we get a Jonathan Reece novel next.
Jonathan Rafe novel?
Jonathan and Rafe thinking Reece is dead would be a real interesting way to take it.
Yeah.
Yes.
Ty, another thing we had asked, because we're wrapping up good guys, Alice is a good guy, so don't forget, we all gave 5s. We got you up to the 5, Chris. We got to include Alice in that. Who does Alice take on next? Now that Alice learned the trappings of trying to emulate and become one human, I feel like she needs to grow and realize her learning model now can't be based off one individual because Reece has a lot of faults. Who does she turn to next to try to have this relationship with? I think it's got to be Vic, or it's got to be a crew of the Reece inner circle.
I think it'll be POTUS.
Oh yeah, Olsen. Yeah,
that's it's interesting to see. Like, I could see him. Like, we never see Alice really again. Like, the next book doesn't even have Alice.
I hope not.
You know?
Not that I dislike her, but I think the last book was a good relief without her. And I think that she just kind of she creates a whole series of issues that otherwise I don't know. She's a great character. I love her in the book she's introduced in The Blood.
She's a little too OP.
Yeah,
you know?
yeah. That Chris, that's perfect. Yeah, she's too OP. She kind of makes him cheat, you know.
Yeah.
And I actually like the last novel where she's in hiding and no one can find her. She's in the net. She's on the web somewhere.
And that made sense. That let the Tom Reece storyline, the Poe and Stowe and Tom Reece history thrive the way she disappeared. She might disappear again to try to become POTUS. So she's almost like in a training camp for herself where the only one she talks to is POTUS. And she like tries to become the Constitution, you know? She tries to actually channel within the government.
Yeah.
Setting. This is a big one. 5 points here for setting. What do you say?
Setting.
Oh, I'm at a 5 just for Whitefish and Kalispell, boys.
He's all in.
He's all in.
No, even the prologue is a fantastic setting, and inside the submarine is awesome.
Oh yeah,
like I don't know. There's just a lot of really big ones. The casino, the rooftops,
Macau,
rooftop casino's great. The
Singapore or
inside a
Philippines,
inside a flooding tunnel. It's all
right.
good things.
Yeah, even if it's not like setting in the sense of like an actual place, like setting in the descriptions of feeling like, you know, when you're on that island and coming in on the boats and going, you know, infiltrating, doing that hook move, having to get into the tunnels, like that kind of stuff. Like you said, being on I felt like I was, you know, it was a true homage to The Hunt for Red October and channeling your inner Clancy and, you know, putting us on that submarine, you know, all the way to the situation, you know, the cut back and forth to the Situation Room.
Yeah.
I think this is truly where the setting is where his writing shines probably the most, like that and the dialogue in this novel. So I am fully on board for a 5 out of 5.
Yeah, I think I agree. 5s across the board. Boys, these are becoming some pretty high scores. And the cover, I don't think it's going to change anything. I don't think that's going to pull us down at all. What do you guys think of those covers? And Tyler, in the notes, you could see I found 5 versions. One of them is the book tour. I thought that is just such a cool logo that was on the book tour T-shirts. I had to put it on the cover graphic.
Which ones did you guys like?
So I was vibing. I really liked the first one, you know, the original. Yeah. But when I just saw this document, like I really like C. This like
C is the best one. C with the submarine, dope. It is awesome.
So that's the mass market paperback. I haven't seen that though.
I really wanted to get one of those book tour shirts. Like, you know, even though that's not a cover, it's. I think it's just a really cool logo, and awesome. You know, seeing it throughout the book tour, you know, both our friend the bus was wearing it at multiple stops, and you know, seeing it on Instagram, awesome cover. And you know, my least favorite B&D with the man looking away.
Yeah, we know we hate those ones.
UK, of course.
Yeah,
those darn
at least
Europeans.
We have the place.
I'm going to find whoever that model is on every single one and hurt him.
Dude, what is with these UK covers?
Same guy.
Yeah. It's sickening.
They love a face. They love a face.
You had to ruin A and C. A, C, and E are so good.
I can't give it a 5 because I'm not vibing with every single one.
Sure.
I even really like A. I really like the color contrast, mainly with the red.
Agreed.
Red.
I like the green. I like the teal, whatever
like a teal green.
Teal green. It's cool.
4.5 then? I think that's where I'm sitting.
Yeah, I'm with that. I'm with that, Mike. 4.5.
Yeah. Like the physical copy of it has like some raised edges to like the mountains.
Yeah, you know what? That's something we can't get with these PDFs of the covers too. Is
know.
like I have all first edition hardcovers all signed, and all of that were offered with shot throughs. I have, and the covers in person are way better than any PDF. They have that shininess to them, that like holographic shimmer to them. They're actually like, I don't know. It's just like a higher quality cover than your typical hardback, I guess.
And he even mentioned that on the book stem of this one, it has that amphibious plane boat,
Right?
Which you can't see obviously from this because it's on the stem. But you know, when I went back home that night, I went and looked for it, and I was like, oh, that's because I didn't know. Normally I look up some things, but for some reason I hadn't had a chance to. I was like, oh, that's cool. I get to see what that boat actually is. So, or plane.
I noticed that too. I noticed the plane.
I think we did our free space before, Tyler, when you asked us 3 things that stand out from the book. Is there anything we missed that you guys want to cover as your 5 out of 5 free 5 points that you loved in this book?
The favorite thing that I had was just really elevating that inspiration and having, you know, the classics, the people that inspired him, the what he was trying to go at, really elevate off the words on the page. So like if I had to pick like an individual thing, it's probably like the author's note, like being as accurate as it is at the end. But yeah, that's what it is for me. What about you, Tyler?
For me, it's got to be all of the James Bond vibes and homages and references, just because that's
for sure.
Probably the biggest influence over this one. And if you're a James Bond fan, it really shows the care and enthusiasm that he has for the franchise and a lot of those other spy thrillers.
So true. I mean, that's why I said this was a classy book for that exact reason. But I've said it over and over, and I'll repeat it. The start and the finish. I think this book is a masterclass in how to open a book and how to close a book. I don't think you could find a better example. From the gripping Chinese submarine scene, we always sometimes criticize if you don't get your characters right off the gate, right out the jump. It's like, where are they? I want to see Reese. I want to see Rafe. But no, that scene is just so good. It makes you almost for a second forget that this is a James Reece novel. And that's insane to say because people keep coming back for James Reece. Yet that subplot is so good. And then we jump to the lake. We get an extended Liz and Reese conversation in the plane. We get Katie on the ground. We see Vic coming in. It's like an assembly of our favorite characters after we just went through this really, really, really long opening. The closing, I've said it over and over, the action sequence, everything after the torture scene, once we're in Manila and we're going to Indonesia, all the way to the end is incredible. And then the really nice finishing touch of President Olson's speech. The sailor scene in Malta, it's haunting. Jonathan and Rafe getting their revenge, closing loose ends. I just think all of that is fantastic. Masterclass in how to start and end a book.
Yep. So, Tyler, I didn't get what you gave covers. Did you give it a 5 or 4.5?
Covers, I give it a 4.5.
4.5. All right. So let me do the math here.
I'm sure rating wise, this one will be really high, but it's not at the top of my series rankings.
Yeah, I know I ended with a 46.5.
Oh, you and Mike are tied.
Both of us, Tyler and I, end up 46.5. And Chris, you gave it the little edge up to the 47.
47.
It's a good score.
If we purely went off of our scores, that would put mine as number 2 behind Savage Son. Above Only the Dead. I don't know. That's hard to say. To me, vibes wise, I liked Only the Dead better. So yeah, I always reserve the right, and Tyler was kind of getting at this, you reserve the right to, in the moment, this is your living list. So I guess we've done it every time we've had you on, Tyler. So last time you had Savage Son, Terminal Lists, Only the Dead, In the Blood, True Believer, Devil's Hand. So where are you slotting?
Okay.
Or have you? Are you going to change the entire
whole
list?
It's all jacked up.
Okay,
I
let's
got
hear it.
Savage Son is number 1 still.
Okay.
Okay.
Only the Dead is 2. Red Sky Mourning
Okay.
3. Terminal List is 4. Then True Believer moved up because I appreciate it more. I think I was a little sour on it until I read it a time or two more. Then In the Blood, and then The Devil's Hand.
Okay. All right.
Wow. Okay.
It's tough because like this makes it seem like In the Blood isn't that good, but these are all good books. I'd say The Devil's Hand is definitely.
No,
We all
yeah,
know The
that's
Devil's
the-
Hand is the weakest, but it's still good. It's just that the other ones are great or like amazing. So
It's true.
Yeah, I'm looking at our scores here, and I gave Devil's Hand a generous 33.5, and Mike, you gave it a 29, but every single other one of Jack's books
40s.
are a 41 or above.
Yeah.
It's crazy how much of an outlier that one is. And,
Yeah.
but we did this poll to give a giveaway, for our first pod, and we had some people who ranked Devil's Hand as their favorite their favorite top 3.
Yeah.
I'm like, I mean, I don't want to yuck your yum, but I mean, come on, like, really?
Some people had it in the 1 spot, but I was surprised so many people had it in the 3 spot. It was like in the 3 spot on like 50% of the people's lists.
A lot.
I was shocked.
I did like it. The first couple read throughs, I really was on board for that. I really loved the torture scene. I liked the running around trying to find the 9/11 perpetrators, and it was like a pre cat and mouse game prior to In the Blood, where he was chasing a guy or he was trying to find the people on the 9/11 list, and meanwhile there's another guy that's killing them ahead of time. And so like it was kind of thrilling and fun, and I don't know, it was. We kind of needed a break from COVID, and it didn't really give you that because it's a bioweapon attack and everything. But, going back, especially, there's, you kind of are short on bad guys, and then there's like 2 chapters in a row where they throw 8 in there that are just blabbed in there, and it's really weakly written, I feel like. So I feel like that the bad guys of that one really fail it.
That book is a prisoner of the moment because of COVID.
Well, it's funny because he wrote it before COVID.
I know. And because of, I just think like the things he's trying to do there, or at least for me, I read it like back to back to back. And maybe it's different when you read. I know it's definitely different when you wait an entire year like we just did, and you don't go back and reread. We were in the midst of doing like this big reread, and like when you read them all close together, you really get a true sense of which ones you're vibing with, which ones you like better personally, so I could see why, people would rank it like that.
It also came after Savage Son. Like, that's tough with how good Savage Son is. That's a tough play. And like, it comes before In the Blood. I think, Tyler, you're right.
You have Savage Son as 4th, Mike.
So I know. But Savage Son is pretty much a dead heat with Only the Dead for me. It's like neither of those deserves to be 4th and 5th space, but I just kind of have to have them there. They're so good. I know I have Savage Son 5th, so here's my list. Terminal List 1st, 47 points. Love the classic, OG. True Believer, 45 points. Not my highest score, but the book has a lot of meaning for me. Red Sky Mourning cracks into the 3 spot. I think it deserves it. It's marginally above Only the Dead in the 4 spot. And I think Red Sky Mourning only gets that edge for the plotting and, like I said, the start and the finish, these excellent sequences, where Only the Dead, I think, had a really cool vibe. It had a really great theme. The Tom Reese stuff was memorable and important and emotional, but Red Sky Mourning just told a better story and had a better plot. So I put that one slightly above. Savage Son, dead heat. I had to drop it to 5th, even though, like I said, dead heat with Only the Dead. And then In the Blood and The Devil's Hand are just a slightly lower tier.
Wow. Yeah, see, mine is almost identical to yours, Tyler. Yeah, the only thing different we have is I swapped the True Believer and Terminal List. I have True Believer 4th, Terminal List 5th, because I just connected with True Believer a little bit better, kind of like what Mike said. But yeah, I Terminal List is good. It's a great starting book, but I feel like we've elevated so much more in these other novels going forward. Savage Son to me is just like one of the best thriller novels I think I've ever read.
I think last time True Believer was my number 2, or I'm sorry, Terminal List was my number 2 because it had such a big impact on
and
me.
it's moved down.
Yeah, got knocked down a few rungs.
Yeah, I guess on rereads, you start to like some of these other ones.
I think I need to reread Savage Son.
Yeah, I think maybe we'll do a revisited.
That's easily the one I've read and listened to the most.
I think if we're going to do a revisited, it's got to be Savage Son if we're going to do it.
It has really, really good pacing. It has really good pacing. You'll get through it way quicker than you expect.
I think it can move up. I will admit it will move up with a reread.
All right, there it is, guys. It's funny. This is just a snapshot in the moment. We just finished this book. We just finished discussing it for, an hour and 40 minutes. Mike and I have already talked about this book for another 2 hours on another 2 pods. So
and
it's
then
like,
Kitchen Talk, which wasn't
we're in this moment
for an hour.
I know we got back from the book signing and we were having a beer. We might just drink water, but we just started, like, we were trying to save it for the pod and,
Yeah. Good luck with that. That's never how it works.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, we're not often in person with each other, so just being able to talk, it was.
Yeah, I was
fun.
bummed I couldn't make it. I went to get tickets and they were sold out, and I didn't want to drive out there. It was like a 7-hour drive for me. If I couldn't have VIP stuff so I could hang out with you guys.
Next time
We'll be all right. This is the first time I've missed it. Actually, I've gone every other year he's had it.
All right, guys, that concludes our coverage of Red Sky Mourning. Next time we do Jack Carr, it's got to be. I definitely want to read his Beirut book. Obviously, we'll be back with Tyler to talk maybe that book. Definitely to talk the prequel series. In the meantime, we're gearing up here for our 2 other big summer reads in the Mitrap. Capture and Kill, Brad Thor, Shadow of Doubt. So pre-order those books, read them, get ready for that. Anything else I need to be mentioning, Mike?
Tune in to the Mitrap podcast and No Limits, the Scott Harvath podcast, because, man, we're going to have Brad Thor on the pod. We would love to get Don Bentley on the pod. That's going to happen. So excited for that. But before we sign off, we've got to give away a shot through autographed edition of Red Sky Mourning, courtesy of our patron, Kevin Bozarth. So if you also want to become a patron, have a chance to win additional autographed books in our giveaways, and join our group chat where Chris and I are always chatting with the patrons about what we're reading, what we like, what books are hitting. Well, for less than the price of a novel a month, you can support the podcast, be the reason we can make more podcasts. Head to thrillerpod.com and click the Patreon tab to learn more. But this shot through edition of Red Sky Mourning, signed by Jack Carr, is going to go to any one of our social media followers. So let me pull up. Let's go with X. Let's give it away on X. And I'm going to go through my timeline of all our comments.
Formerly the app formerly known as Twitter.
Formerly known as Twitter. I'm going to scroll up and down and stop my thumb on one comment in my notifications. Pause. Arcbo Socks. At Arcbo Socks. Kevin.
Okay.
Kevin from Arkansas. It's coming your way. We'll reach out. We'll hit you up and get you a copy, a shot through edition of Red Sky Mourning.
Congrats, Kevin. All right. Well, we got to say thank you. Thank you, Tyler.
Yeah,
Thanks for coming on, man.
For having
this
me.
is great.
Thanks for having me back on, as always. Love coming on here.
Appreciate it.
We also have to thank our patrons, our special Deputy Director, Sherry F., Special Operators, Jason C., Special Agents, Ben, Daryl, Kevin, George, Matt, Don, Peggy, and Mark. Please subscribe, rate, and review to all 3 seasons. And as always, just let Reese be Reese.